Hey there, and welcome to another weekly growth coaching with yours truly, Julia Gentry. And today we're going to be talking about leadership. Why are we talking about leadership? We are talking about leadership because I believe that we're all leaders, right? Whether we are stay-at-home moms homeschooling our children, whether we are business owners and leading people down a direction of someplace we've never been, right? Or we're managers of a company leading a team of people. We are all leading all day in every way. And the main question that we want to be asking ourselves is, am I leading these people in the direction I want us to go, right? And so this has nothing to do with status. This doesn't have to do with title. It doesn't even have to do with how many people you're leading. What this has to do is, how are you leading? So we'll just check in on that today. How are you leading? Okay. And so today what we're going to do is we are actually going to address two of the most underutilized, most high yield questions you could ask as a leader. Okay. And I think that this is important because right now there's a million pages you could read on good leadership. And there's a million different searches that you could probably find 5 best ways to lead your team. And yet it's these moments that happen real time that no amount of Google searching or research could help us, right? And so let's paint the picture, right? If you're a stay-at-home mom, it's that moment when your 4-year-old freaks out and throws a temper tantrum or doesn't want to do school, right? Or it's that moment where you have a team member who has done something a million ways, and on the millionth and one way of doing it, they totally mess up, right? Or the way that they respond to the customer is not in alignment with your values, or you've got someone on your team, right? And you're in the department that you're managing, and they break the process, right? Like we have a process and a way of doing things, and it doesn't meet your expectations. And so generally in those moments, we don't always respond in the best way. So we're going to talk about, what do you do real time in those moments, right? When our default, or we could call it auto trip, is to react. It's to assume, right? It's we get judgmental and critical, and what the heck are you doing, and why did you do that? Or maybe it's just me, right? But generally our knee-jerk reaction is one that says you are guilty till proven innocent. And to be good leaders, we probably should switch the way we're approaching these scenarios, right? Because it's easy to be a leader when everything is going well and people are responding the way that you want them to respond. But I'd like to propose that leadership isn't about just doing the things the right way when everything's going well. Is how are you responding when things aren't? And I think that that's really the first step into this conversation, which is generally what happens in these moments is that we have an unmet expectations. We went into the day thinking that the day with the kids and homeschooling and everything was going to be beautiful and great and it was going to flow, and then it doesn't. Or we're on par for having an amazing year and we've staffed up and everybody understands the process and your expectations, and then there's an epic fail and someone makes a mistake, right? And so it's in those moments of unmet expectations that we can get a little wonky if we're not careful. So I'm going to give you 2 questions to ask anyone, a 4 to 5-year-old or a team member or a staff member that you have on your team, that's actually going to help you understand the full context and is going to help you be better together, right? Because sometimes in these heated moments, we don't get through them in the best way. We motivate in fear, right? Like we motivate our kids to make the right choices because they fear us. I fear what mom and dad are going to say. I fear making a mistake. I fear failing because if I do, they yell at me or they get mad or I disappoint them. And we create an environment. We're actually creating a culture of fear. Same thing with our teams. Same thing with our staff. We pigeonhole them so much that there is no creativity and no room for failure. And though that works for a while, it is basically setting up people for failure. It's setting them up for the thing that we fear the most, which is don't fail. So they're so afraid of not failing that when the moment comes of failing, guess what? Oh man, all the things, right? And so we're actually not creating an environment for people to show up and be who they are fully intended to be. And that, my friends, is my definition of leadership. There's a million out there that you could Google, but my definition of leadership is the ability to pursue something that sets your soul on fire and encouraging others to do the same. And if we approach things in fear of people failing, fear of failing ourselves, it's not going to create an atmosphere and a culture where we are pursuing the things that are setting our soul on fire and encouraging others to do the same. They're going to be making decisions in fear, only to probably leave from exhaustion and stress. Okay, so here's the 2 questions that you are going to pose to people when that moment happens, when an expectation is not met, when someone makes a mistake, when someone fails. And before I do that, let's also set the stage with, we have to come at this going, is this a mistake, like a one-off? This person generally doesn't do things like this. They don't respond like this, like it's a rarity. Or is it a habit? Because if it's a habit versus a mistake, we're going to come at this thing a little bit differently, but you knowing that going into it is going to make a big difference. Because how many of you know that if you watch someone make a mistake, you're like, wow, that's not their tendencies. They just probably need like a little pep talk of like, hey, checking in, making sure that that you saw this, as this doesn't seem like that's in alignment with who you are. Okay. Versus I've been seeing this habit over time. I've been seeing over the course of this last year that you've been failing at this time and time again, right? Or that you've been missing this mark time and time again. Big difference. Okay. Once you can acknowledge that, here's the first question. Can you help me understand how you think about this? Okay. Here's why this question is so important. Because if you're not careful, you're going to go in with so many assumptions about what they did and why they did it, assumptions about what the customer said or didn't say, or what the kid thought or didn't think. And our assumptions will kill us, right? Because generally they're based in past experiences that might not have even been true. So we come at this with already our fight or flight. I'm assuming the worst. You're guilty till proven innocent. And so we don't actually get the full context. So you're going to greet them and you're going to go, hey, here was the mistake, or here's the pattern that I'm seeing. Okay. Here's the mistake. And can you help me understand what you were thinking? Or here's the pattern I'm seeing. And can you help me understand what's going on here? This is going to diffuse the situation first and foremost. It's going to have everybody put their boxing gloves down. It's not that you're right and they're wrong and you're right, or somebody's failed. You're actually asking for the full context of what's happening. And then you're going to quietly wait to hear them. And that's actually what makes a good relationship. And I see this with me and my husband. When we get in what we call intense fellowship, we aren't actually striving to be right. We are desiring to be heard. That's really what communication is that, sure, don't get me wrong, I think we all admit that we like being right, but what we're really wanting is just for the other person on the receiving end to hear us, to empathize with us, to get context, to slow down their world just enough to get into ours. And this question is positioning you to do that. It's positioning you to understand their point of view. Now, once you have full context of their point of view, it's going to give you an advantage point. It's going to help you understand how they think, which is so important as a leader, because leadership is really about instilling a mindset. This is why everything that I do is so focused on growth and mindset, is because if we can change our mind, we can change our life, right? And what people don't need is one more person to teach them what to think, right? Like, we need to be teaching people how to think. We need to be teaching them principles and concepts that actually give them permission to explore how to do something by way of how we think about things, okay? So once you have the full context, here's the second part of the question that you're going to ask, which is, are you open for feedback? What this does is it's going to actually continue to create that connection and that engagement and that trust. And it's basically asking them, do you trust me to lead you? Are you open and willing for me to give you feedback that's going to make you better on the other side of this? Generally, most people are going to say, yes, I'm open for feedback. Then you're going to start your sentence like this. Here's how I think about this. Why that sentence is so important is it's going to give you the opportunity to instill values. Don't just teach them about the exact way that they're supposed to do the process. Generally speaking, they probably know, right? If this is a mistake, they probably know. If this is a pattern, they might know a little bit, but not enough of why you do what you do. And when you share how you think about something, you start to change their mindset. Example, if they say, well, I avoided that conversation with our client because I didn't know the answer, so I just figured I'd call him when I knew it. Well, I hear you. What that resulted in was an upset client. And had we just gone at it with honesty, which is a big value of mine, we could have said to our client, hey, you know what? We don't know the answer on this, but we're going to find the answer and we're going to create that answer with you. How does that sound? Okay? Because we believe in honesty and transparency. You're coaching them basically to understand your values, right? Or they might say, right, one of your kids goes, well, I just don't like confrontation with dad. I was going to tell dad how I felt, but I don't like confrontation. Then you go, okay, I hear you. And I don't think that confrontation is always an easy thing, but how about just communicating with dad? How about that we believe that connection is so important in this family, and when you can share your perspective and dad can share his perspective, that it's actually not confrontation, it's an ability to connect. Connection doesn't just happen on good days. Connection happens on hard days too. What this does is it bridges the gap between where people are and where they could be. It connects them from a mistake and failure to potential. It doesn't make them afraid of failing. It connects them with the heartbeat of grace and love and truth. That is key for us as leaders. It's not making people wrong. It's not needing to be right. It's not creating an atmosphere around us where people are afraid to be who they are and to make some mistakes. We have to give people the space to make mistakes. We have to give people the space to fail. Just like you need that, so do I. And so what these questions are going to do is it's going to create an atmosphere and an environment for you to not only connect with the people that you lead, but it's going to help you hear you. It's going to help you get grounded in your values and the things that are most important to you, that set your soul on fire, so that you can encourage other people to do the same. These are the types of leaders that we need today more than ever before. And so I encourage you today, tomorrow, later this month, when that moment comes, because it will, and you are triggered by an unmet expectation or a mistake or a pattern that someone in your life is creating, it's an opportunity to ask these simple prompting questions of, can you help me understand where you're coming from? And are you open for feedback? Because this is how I think about this. I hope that this meets you where you're at today, whether you're dealing with your 4-year-old or whether you're dealing with a staff member or whether you're dealing with an employee. I hope that this meets you where you're at and helps you continue to be the best leader that God created you to be. And join me each week as I give you, tidbits, principles, tools, concepts that are going to allow you to rethink everything so you can have anything.